I want to thank the Waterbury Church for inviting me to come. You didn't know me. Jim had met me on one occasion. He received a recommendation for me, and you took a chance on it. Thank you. I trust that you've not been disappointed and that we've learned some things. I have enjoyed this. I was asked, how long am I going to keep doing this? Well, I have more booked, and I'm going to do as long as I physically can. Since I can sit down and do these and go back to the motel and rest, I think I can, for a few more years, I can do this. This is a passion for me. I feel strongly about the educational program. And I know it's a passion for you. Some of you drove for miles and over an hour to get here. Thank you. I have been impressed with everybody with the questions. You've said such good things in the questions. And I appreciate that. I really do. And I'll be remembering you and praying for you, and I trust that you will remember me as I go back to Tennessee. And I'll be there till Friday, and I'll leave for another meeting. Then back home, I hope for a couple of months when I don't have to travel. I'm looking forward to breathing for a little while. The secretary here has run off the slides if you want to take a printed copy. And we thank her. Her name is... Patricia. That's right. I would just see it if you knew. But Patricia, thank you for doing that. And if you want the printed copy, they are on a sheet, and you can get them here after the class, $7.99. We do take MasterCard, and with references, we will accept cash. They're free, of course. You can, again, check out the church's website, and if you would like them mailed to you by email, give her your email address, and she'll do that. We just want you to have the information. Okay? The last session today asks another question. We've tried to build on each one. At the end of the day, I think we want to know, okay, how do we do it? How do we build a program that meets everybody's needs? It's easy to focus on one group and meet their needs, but we want to meet everybody's needs, from the smallest child to the oldest person. And in a Bible school program, we will have people in the classes who range all the way from a few days old to in their 90s. We're supposed to try to meet everybody's needs. How in the world do we do that? I did some work about age diversifications. If we could find the perfect cross-section of our population, and we understand that cross-sections, the perfect cross-section is a little hard to find. You wouldn't find it in Central Florida probably, where you have a lot of retirees. You might not find it in the Silicon Valley, where you have a lot of yuppies who are just starting out and have wee small children. But if you could find the perfect cross-section, it would look something like this. You would have about 8.8 preschoolers. That's birth to age 5. In elementary school, that's the first 6 grades, you would have about 9.4% of the people. In grades 7 through 12, in what we would call youth, you would have about 10.5% of your people. From 18 to 65, you would have 60.7% of your people. And over 65, you would have 10.6%. Now, I think those numbers are rather revealing. Do you have any reaction to them? Just looking at them, what's your first reaction to those numbers?
Adult population is very bigger.
Say it again.
The adult population.
Yeah. more adults than anything else, by far. Now, you're blessed here in this congregation, probably with more children, percentage-wise, than the average congregation. But in the average congregation, something like 71+% are going to be adults. You know what's sad about that? What part of our program do you suppose receives the least attention? You think? You think school children?
Youth.
You really think so? Oh, older adults? It's my observation, strictly my observation, that across the board, the adult program receives the least attention. I'll tell you why. How do we get a teacher? Old brother so-and-so has been teaching for something like 110 years. We can't ask him to stop. We go to sleep in his class, but we've got to let old brother so-and-so teach. Or, we've been in Matthew for 4 years now. And we're all the way to chapter 6. Acts, that's right. Acts is our book. And I like to study Acts. But do you realize there are 65 other books in the Bible? And we need to study those books too. Or, we just let everybody teach the adult program by rotation. Teach whatever you want to teach. You're up next. What do you want to teach? Well, I was over so-and-so visiting and I found they were using this book. I think I'll get that book and use it. Okay. There's no rhyme. There's no reason. There's no overall goal. And I have to say, my experience says that we don't do the adult program very well. Now, it may very well be different here. I hope it is, okay? Or where you go to church. I hope it is. I'm just telling you my experience. And we try to do well with the smaller grades, with the children. We have teachers, a lot of them are women who are terribly dedicated, very creative. They do hard work. They decorate their rooms. They spend hours getting ready. I know when my wife says, "Honey, can we watch a movie together tonight?" I know what that means. I know that means that we're going to watch a movie with scissors in our hands cutting out stuff for Sunday's class. I know exactly what it means. We've got to do a good job across the board. From the youngest to the oldest, we have to try to meet people's needs. How do we do that? Okay, we have a lovely house. We're going to build it. We're going to build it from the bottom up. I think that's the way you build houses. I don't think they ever start with a roof. Okay? They start at the bottom. And we're going to talk about the particular needs of various age groups. Birth to age 5. We are laying the foundation. And in laying the foundation, we are trying to establish proper attitudes. With children like that, I know there are some folks who say, "You can't teach them anything, you're just babysitting." You're wrong. You're wrong. It's amazing what you can teach children. They are sponges. They just absorb it. What kind of attitudes are we trying to teach them? Attitudes toward what? God. God is so good. God gave us this. God is wonderful. What else? Okay, with each other. We need to be kind to one another. We need to share with one another. Okay? What other kinds of attitudes? Toward whom? themselves. You are important. You are valuable. What about mom and dad? Mom and daddy love you. What about the Bible? The Bible is God's book. How do we form these attitudes in children 1 to 3? What is the method we use? Teachers? Songs? Lots of hand kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Play acting. Wrote. They love to sing the same songs over and over and over again every Sunday, and maybe the second time the same Sunday. Yeah. And my wife has taught in this class for this age for years, and she has all of the props. She has the little boat that you put the animals in 2 by 2, you know, and she's involved in all of those kind of things and loves it. And she does a great job. We need to make sure that when children come to Bible class at Waterbury or wherever, that we teach them attitudes and lay the foundation. At ages 4 to 7, we're putting down the flooring. And we're building Bible knowledge. We're teaching facts. How do we teach the facts? Wrote, again. How else? Stories. Who said that? Yeah, Bible stories. Bible stories are great. And you think of how to be creative when you do that. Did you ever consider you're teaching somebody about David and Goliath if you just get a pole that's the height of Goliath and have every child stand beside it to get an idea of how big this giant was? Or let them make little slingshots. Now you got to be careful about that. Don't furnish them with ammunition. But teach the stories. Let them learn the facts of the Bible. That's rote, that's repetition, that's singing again. The next level is walls. We are doing a chronology of events. How do things fit together? Which came first? Moses or Noah? And you can think that through and know, but wouldn't it be nice just to have an idea of how everything fits together in a story? Let me recommend, if you do not have them in your classrooms at this age, that you get a chronology, a timeline, and you post it on the wall. There are some good ones. And I said that one time, and I used to have one in my briefcase, but I don't have it there anymore. It has kind of been worn by traveling. And somebody said, well, how do you teach a timeline? Well, you don't teach a timeline. You use a timeline to teach. And if you're studying Noah, you say, look, let's find Noah on the timeline. Let's see about when that was. Let's see what was going on in the rest of the world. And we're establishing a chronology of events there. And we're teaching something about relationships. What relationships at ages 8 to 12? What are the important relationships that are developing? Parents. Children and parents. What about children and their peers? Friends. What about children and Jesus? About this time, at the end of this, is when children are beginning to think about becoming Christians. And so we are developing that relationship, those relationship skills. In teens, we're going to put up the rafters. We're going to teach how do you make decisions. It goes back to something I said earlier. We don't tell them the decision to make, we equip them to make the decision. You can't be with a young person, every hour of the day. You've got to trust they'll make the right decision, but you have to equip them to make that right decision. And then you're going to put the roof on, which is the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry. This is where you go out and do stuff, where people actually carry through. Now, There's a flaw in that. Now, I don't think there's any word misspelled. It's not that kind of flaw. But tell me what you see as the flaw in this building.
Tools. You need tools.
Okay. I didn't mention anything about tools. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
You have to equip the adults to start congregation.
Okay, that's close. Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes when a family brings a child to church, they may already be 12 years old. They're not tiny anymore.
This slide operates on the assumption that you have them from birth to death. That's wonderful when you do. I'm a product of that. Okay? Church, it's the only thing I've ever known. Okay? I was carried to church when I was days old, and I've been going ever since. And I was in class when I was a newborn child. I've been in every one of those classes. A lot of you have not been. So what does a church do when you get somebody who chronologically is up on the roof, but spiritually they're down on the ground level? What do you do then? How do you build the building with them? Good question, don't you think? How do you deal with those folks? How do you make the program reach them too? Okay?
One of the things we have here is a new Christian class.
Okay.
That starts from the creation on up.
Okay. I think it's important to have a class. Do not throw them in the Revelation class, okay? Put them in a class where they can wrestle with their needs and be instructed on their level. Now, let me make a suggestion. Be right with you. Because if I let you answer, I'll forget what I was going to say. It's been a long day. I suggest that we call that class a foundations class or some such benign name. When you call it a new converts or new Christians class, do you know who you're saying it's for? Only for? New Christians. What about it's our foundations class? We're going to study some basic things. We want our new Christians in there. We will even ask them specifically to go. There may be others who need to go, although they've been hanging around for a long time, and you call it a new converts class, and they won't go because they've been members of the church for 40 years. But they might go to a foundations class or some other benignly named class. But also, it provides wonderful relationships and mentoring opportunities for the new converts. They meet some big brothers and big sisters. So it's a personal preference. I like the idea of the class. I have a feeling about calling it something else. But that's just me. Okay? Yes, ma'am, you were going to say. No. You're right. Say that last thing again. Okay. More so than the upper ones. Yes. Okay. Okay. But go back to that question. What else do we do with the person who's on the top level chronologically but not spiritually? So we got a new class for them. What else do we do? Jim?
One is that I was about to say that comment on the new Christian class.
Okay.
Yeah, and, sometimes you'll have people, with the learning styles that will go into what you might call a foundational nutrition class, may not be ready for that group setting.
Okay.
And so with aftercare,
That's
you
great.
have an opportunity to do some one-on-one
Yes.
and team studies in the home or wherever, and so you can get on a more personal level.
Yes. Okay. And I agree. I agree that we have to have things like Bible correspondence courses. We have to have home studies. We have to have mentoring programs. We've got to make sure that those people do not fall through the cracks. We just absolutely must do that. Let me tell you about a fellow by the name of Chuck. Chuck walked into our services on a Wednesday night. And I'll tell you how he was dressed. He was dressed in camo clothing with combat boots and a gold cross around his neck, big gold cross, and a ponytail that fell almost to his waist. And I stuck out my hand and I said, "Good evening, sir. I'm Tom Miller." He said, "I'm Chuck." Chuck was about 6'2", weighed about 250 pounds. And I stuck out my hand. He said, "I like to hug." I do too, but I thought that was a pretty strange man. So I hugged him. He broke about 3 of my ribs. I said, "What brings you to us?" He said, "Got one of your papers." House to House and Heart to Heart. I don't know whether you're familiar with that publication or not, but he said, "Thought I'd come and see you." He said, "My wife died, Virginia. Had some family down here, came down here to stay a while." Chuck, you're welcome. So he came to our services, next service. He came back dressed the same way. Broke the rest of my ribs. And he went into the building, and I was standing there shaking his hand, and one of our, you always have the church members that say things like this. "Somebody better do something about that." So I turned around, and Chuck was down in front of the pulpit on his knees, praying. He came from a background, that's what you did. You went up front and prayed. So I did something about it. I went up there and got down on my knees with him. That freaked everybody out. I said, "Big guy, what's the problem?" He said, "I don't think I can stay sober another day." I said, "Oh, Chuck, let us help you." I said, "Let's go through this service and we'll get somebody with you. We're going to help you." And we did. Chuck kept coming to church. We assigned one of our men to him as a big brother, a mentor. He spent hours and hours and hours with Chuck. And we baptized Chuck. And Chuck was a big old boy. He didn't know Matthew from Mark, from Luke, from John. Didn't know a thing. It was like a blank paper. Came to church one day and he'd cut his ponytail. He said, "You notice anything?" I said, "Your ponytail's gone, Chuck. Did anybody say anything to you about that?" Because I wanted to know who I was going to have to beat up, Because if somebody had given him grief over his ponytail. He said, "Nobody, I just don't need it anymore." I said, "Great, great." He married one of our widows. I remember the first time he passed out communion emblems. I thought, boy, you've come a long way. He died from a brain tumor and devastated us all. But sometimes you just have to love people like Chuck through it all. You do. And you got to be patient. And they may be dressed kind of funny. And they may come from the other side of the tracks somewhere. But you got to love them with the love of Jesus. And you got to teach them kindly and patiently. And who knows what they'll become. Who knows what the potential is there. You see, our job is to train the babies and the youth and the adults and the Chucks of this world. And we've got to commit ourselves to that. And instead of spending so much blooming time on trying to decide if we're going to stripe the parking lot, what if we would decide, spend hours praying and thinking about how we're going to meet the needs of our people educationally? How can we build a program that will meet everybody's needs, from the youngest member to the oldest member of the class? And what about those who have special needs, whatever that need is? I think there are 5 essentials to doing this, and I'm going to close with these. Number 1, you have to have dynamic leadership. You've got to have people who have a heart for this. I feel for elders and the tremendous work they do, the weight that's on their shoulders. But you've got to have leadership or you have no program. And I think we've done pretty well by just letting the program run itself. What could it be if we had dynamic leadership that would fund it, that would advertise it, that would promote it, that would honor its teachers, that would make sure that the teachers are equipped in every way to do what they do, who would provide the equipment so that our teachers don't have to fund their own classroom, that it would become a budgetary item that's high. Had an elder tell me, for a congregation I worked with, he said, I'll tell you what, as long as I'm an elder, there are 2 things in this church that will never go begging for money. I said, John, what are they? He said, number 1, evangelism, and number 2, education. You got to love an elder like that. He said, as long as I'm an elder, those 2 things will never go begging for money. Should they? That's the heart of the church. Saving souls and teaching them to be like Jesus. That's what evangelism and education is all about. So let's make sure as leaders that there's the money there, that we even have workshops, that we do whatever we can do to inspire and train our teachers, that we have reasonable organization. Now, by reasonable, I think it can get so contrived that nobody knows what to do or who to talk to or to report to. But somebody has to be in charge. If you can't be here on a Sunday, who do you notify? If you want something for your classroom, who do you ask? There has to be reasonable organization. Now, I want to tell you what I recommend. Doesn't mean that you have to have it. I recommend an educational committee. Here's why. We get people who forget that they were ever 2 years old and haven't seen a 2-year-old for a long time telling us what we need for 2-year-olds. Who would be better equipped to know that? Somebody who teaches in that area. Now that means we would have women on our educational committee. I personally don't see any issue with that. Some do. But they have no authority. They're not exercising any authority over a man. They're not teaching over a man. They're simply making suggestions to the elders about what we could do in our educational program. So I recommend and like best a 4 or 5 person educational committee that meets, that discusses all aspects of the program, from the smallest class to the adults, and makes reports to the elders or to the leadership, whomever that may be in the congregation, who puts in requests in the cradle room, roll room. We need a new table, and it needs to be this kind of table. I said that one time, that the cradle roll needs a new class and a new table, and one of the men said, well, I'm somewhat of a carpenter. I think I can build one. Said, you want it about the height of these chairs? I said, no. They want it with little jumper seats in it. What? Want it in a kidney shape so the teacher can sit in the middle and touch all of the children around her. Huh? He said, I don't think I can build that. I said, well, they got one on sale right here. We can get it for $199.95. He said, order it. And we made the cradle roll teacher very happy because it was a table specifically built for cradle roll. So reasonable leadership. And let people know, if you can't be here, report to somebody. Don't just not show up. That's unconscionable, people. It really is. I can't be there, but I forgot to tell anybody. So all the kids show up and there's no teacher. Well, let's try to get somebody. Well, I guess I'll go in and try to keep them quiet for a little while. And you call that Bible class? Is it not more important than that? And teachers should not get their own replacements. That should be somebody else's job, to know whom we want in that classroom. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't help when you get a call at 9 o'clock in the morning.
It does not help. You got to teach this morning. Okay. Now, there are emergencies. There are illnesses. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about when somebody knows they're not going to be here and doesn't notify anybody to teach. Doesn't even know who to call to get somebody to teach. We need dedicated, capable teachers. We need people who are dedicated to their jobs and capable of teaching. We need good curriculum. Whether you buy curriculum, whether you write your own curriculum, whatever you do, we need good curriculum. We must not be married to our curriculum that we cannot go beyond it. But we need to have a plan. We need to have a game plan of where we're going. And we need to have an overall emphasis on the program. I've stressed that from the first session. We need to make sure that people who walk through those doors know we do education. And we're serious about it. We have a quality program. Come and see. Okay, last session, final question. Yes, ma'am.
For the curriculum, do you suggest all the classes have kind of the same, say they're all learning about Noah, all the classes, but for that grade level? Or should they be something more specific to that group of kids?
Okay. I recommend that there be an overall curriculum guide. Now here's why. If there isn't, you may study Noah in the first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, and adults. Year after year after year after year after year. Because after you've studied it in the first grade, they may be studying that same thing when you get to second grade. And study same thing. And that's a great story, but for goodness sakes, there's a lot of other stuff. If you don't have an overall program and guide, then you repeat stuff falls through the cracks. So I believe that we need an overall curriculum guide so that we give a balance to our program. I think we need to have a guide that helps each section be prepared for the next section.
Do you have any to recommend?
I think that depends on what you want. A lot of people are tied to what translation does it use. And so if you recommend one, they say, we don't like that translation. I believe that the Gospel Advocate material is conservative material. It uses a New King James Version of the Bible. And I don't know anybody who complains very much about the Gospel Advocate series. What am I trying to think of? Not Star. They publish Star. Who is that? No, not the National Enquirer. They don't do Bible school material.
It's a stop.
Star, yeah. They do a magazine called Star. Oh, what is that? Anyway, what I would suggest you do, what I have suggested that people do, is write to companies that are associated with our brotherhood. Ask them to send you samples, which they will do. Now, what it will be is out-of-date material, okay, which is fine. And they'll send you a box of it for every age group. Review it. Have some kind of guide by which you review it. I think I have one that I've used in the past. Ask your educational committee, ask your teachers to sit down and rate the material according to the guide. Okay? Here's a guideline for evaluating curriculum. And 1 is poor, 2 is fair, 3 is average, 4 is good, 5 is excellent, 6 is superior. You rate it according to its biblical content, according to its appropriateness, according to its teachability, in regard to its appearance. And then you make a decision. Now, I'll be glad if somebody wants to make a copy of this to use. You may do that, okay? But that's a guideline for evaluating curriculum. And so what I've said to churches who are asking that question, write to these companies, say, send us a sample box. They'll send you a whole box of material. Look it over, see how you feel about it. It's important to me, and I think to your program, that everybody uses the same curriculum. Or you're going to have repeat after repeat, and you're going to have stuff drop through the cracks. Now, here's the problem you're going to have. I don't like this material. Okay. There's got to be one of those in every group. Okay. Don't let them run the thing. Okay? I would say whatever the group decides is the decision. Whether I prefer that or not, it's the decision, unless I have a biblical objection to it. 20th century Christian puts out material that a lot of folks use. I think it uses the NIV. There's all kinds of curriculum on the market. And I would get a catalog from one of our supply houses, and I would just write to them or call them and say, send us a box of material. And use this guide to rate it and see what works for you best. Because it's hard for me to come to Waterbury and tell you what curriculum you need. Okay? Somebody else, question? Yes, sir.
How much should the youth minister be involved in the curriculums for the kids, under 3 to 5 and 4 to 12?
I think he ought to be involved in a good way, significant way there. That's his area. And why call him a youth minister and not let him have a say in what the youth study? I would think we would want his input. Okay? Yes.
How about adult curriculum? What have you seen to be effective?
We're using the Gospel Advocate Quarterly thing, the commentary thing. And I like it. It's pretty good. The downside of that is that your teachers have to get in the habit of teaching a lesson per week and going on. It doesn't allow you to spend 3 years in the first 2 chapters of Acts. Okay? Because you've got to move on. That's the downside I see to it. Is what I think it does, I think its outstanding characteristic is it takes you through the Bible. It has a quarter Old Testament, quarter New Testament, quarter Old Testament, quarter New Testament. And we are studying the Corinthian correspondence right now in this quarter. And so we're going through 1st and 2nd Corinthians and picking out the highlights. That some people that resonates with and others don't like that. I think traditionally in our adult program we have done verse by verse, but what I really would recommend is that you do a questionnaire and ask your people what they want, what they need. What do you feel like you need as a congregation? And then go find material that addresses that. I have a hard time saying all I want to say about any one subject in one quarter. I'm teaching on Wednesday night a little booklet that I wrote entitled Saved By, ellipsis, ... And we're looking at all of the different things that contribute to our salvation. Grace, faith, baptism, works, hope, blood, that kind of stuff. And they said, you're going to teach next quarter. And I said, can I have at least 2 quarters? And they said, yeah. Of course, I'm new and they're letting me have my way right now. That'll probably change. But I just didn't feel like I could get all said I wanted to say on that in 1 quarter. 1 quarter is a little restrictive. So I would recommend that you say to your students, what would you like to study? What's important to you? What do you feel like you need? And then you go find specific material that relates to that. But do that only in the context of a goal. I think an adult program ought to have at least a 5-year goal. Where do you want your teachers to be or your students to be in 5 years? What do you want them to have learned in 5 years? Now, at the end of 5 years, you're going to be somewhere. Doesn't common sense say you would plan where you want to be in 5 years? You might say in 5 years, we want them to have surveyed these books. In 5 years, we would want them to have done topical studies over these subject matters. Otherwise, you're not going to get those things in. So you start out with 5 years and you say, here's where I plug in. We need something about the family, so let's plan to have a couple of quarters about the family. In that 5 years, we need something about the restoration, to understand our heritage. We don't do much work in that. So let's have a class on our roots religiously. In the 5 years, we need something on whatever. And we plug those things in. So that at the end of 5 years, at least, we have a goal in mind and we have achieved it. Otherwise, we're going to be somewhere in 5 years, but we will not have accomplished very much. We'll still be in Acts. Yes, sir.
We've got a small group study going along, got a curriculum, and somebody like Chuck shows up, and that's more foundational questions. To what extent do you install a curriculum to accommodate Chuck?
I think in a small group study, somebody like Chuck would fit in just fine because he was very bright and he caught on quickly. He just was a blank sheet of paper. And in a small groups, you have more opportunity to ask questions and respond than you would in some other setting. He would have done very well. As a matter of fact, we did have that. We called it Life Group. Love, involvement, fellowship, and evangelism. That's what life stood for. Okay, anybody else? Thank you so much. Okay, I've had a good time. Hope you have. I'll be here Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday, well, both times Sunday morning, I guess. What time do you start? 10. Oh, I get to sleep in. So I'll see you at 10 and 11, or thereabouts. Maybe with you all it'll be about 10:15, about 11:30. See, I'm a quick study. And I hope to see the members here, the rest of you who've come from some distance. God bless you. Have a safe journey home. Thank you so much for coming. You've made me happy, happy, happy. Some of you don't get that, but that's all right. You just don't watch. You just don't watch the right television programs. And I'm still glad I do these. Okay? I'll turn it over to whomever. Thank you.